Hello everyone, this is part 6 of What If Naruto Took Hinata for Himself, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Naruto crashed into Hinata's room, literally, he fell through the screen door and slipped on a top that had been left on the floor. Stood on a stool being fitted for a dress by Tenten was his maid of honor. Her eyes widened when she saw him in the mirror and she spun around to stare at him. Hinata came out of the bathroom with her hair done up in a bizarre top knot. Tenten, I look like a moose. Then she saw Naruto and stopped short. Oh no, cried Tenten, you're not supposed to see the bride. Naruto waved it off and turned to Hinata. The hair did make her look like she had antlers. Hinata seemed to grasp that he needed a moment and ushered the others out. He stared at the floor between them. Cold feet? She asked, her voice was low. She sounded like she had been expecting it. He shook his head, still not meeting her eyes. Really? Her voice was surprised then. Hinata, he began, then trailed off. Deciding that there was no other way than to ask straight out, he took a deep breath and blurted, are you sure you thought this through? There was a sound like a bird coughing. Naruto realized it was her attempt at incredulity. It's just that you'll be giving up so much. Not only could it ignite a clan war, but you'll be estranged from your family. Hinata clenched her fists. Hard as it may be to believe Naruto, yes, I have considered that. I chose freedom. I chose you. He looked up at her then. But are you sure? Your father. My father doesn't come into it. She barked. My father is a proud man, so proud he's forgotten what else family means. Naruto felt bad again, so guilty that he had managed to misjudge her. She relaxed then. Are you rethinking? No. He cried, anguished, staring wildly at her. She felt a little smile dance on her face. Then can you get out? Because Tenten is chomping at the bit and I'm not going to be one to make her mad today. That's not fair. Naruto exploded. This is, he reined in his anger, suddenly shuffling his feet, looking embarrassed. Today belongs to you. Us. She corrected with a tiny little smile. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. He took her face in his hands and pulled her to him. He kissed her as softly as he could, however she had other ideas. Throwing her arms around his neck, her fingers meshed in his hair and pulled him hard against her. Their mouths were so tightly locked it hurt. Naruto felt his freshly acquired Hinata-related self-control begin to crack. Wishing so hard that he didn't have to, he pushed her away. She fell back panting. Well, she gasped, gulping air, don't know where that came from. Well, we can explore that more tonight. He said hoarsely. He made as if to kiss her mouth, but then thought better of it. See you later. He pressed his still tingling lips to her forehead and ran from the room. But Hinata didn't notice. Everything went blank after the word, tonight, crossed his lips. Naruto and Sakura reached the town hall first. It was already dark and they went straight in. The woman at the desk smiled at them. Hello, Uzumaki, said Naruto harshly. Sakura shot the woman an apologetic look. He's a bit nervous. They all are. She smiled. Sakura saw Naruto roll his eyes and had to fight a smile. As they walked into the little church, Naruto muttered, I'm not nervous about that bit. I'm nervous about getting caught. Bull. Sakura hissed back, you are bricking it. You won't even say the words. Afraid she won't turn up. No. He shot back defensively. She laughed, but then they heard the opening of the doors and suddenly were all seriousness. Naruto whipped off the cloak he had been wearing and flung it onto a pew. He was left in a stylish if slightly rumpled suit. As he had asked, his collar was open, leaving about an inch of honey-colored F visible at the hollow of his T, which Sakura could see was sweating. The jacket and pants were a deep gray, offset by the bright white shirt he had on beneath it. His heart began to thud as the double doors swung open and what he saw there almost stopped it altogether. Tenten came first, her red dress adding warmth to her tightened skin, a little posy of red and white flowers in her hand. She was smiling widely, thrilled with her own handiwork, and a moment later they saw why. Radiant. That was the way to describe a bride, wasn't it? Well, that didn't even cover her in that moment. Her long thick hair tumbled over her shoulders in waves of raven black, it was only held back in one place. Behind her ear Tenten had pushed a big white rose. Its elegant petals furled over one another and buried themselves against her soft hair like they belonged there, nestled in her black tresses. Her face was even more beautiful, her eyes seemed purer tonight, more than they ever had. To say that she had no pupils you would think that it would diminish her. Instead the strange lilac tint they always had, glowed deeply like wells of fire, of power, unadulterated power. She was riding the rush her soon-to-be freedom was giving her. The fire would caress and care, not harm. It would envelop Naruto and he wanted it entirely. He wanted that lilac fire to bind him so tightly that he would in its embrace and exist there as a part of her. She was beaming, the perfect bow of her lips curved into the warmest of smiles. Tenten had colored them a pale shade of pink and they looked silky and yielding. Next, and Naruto hated himself a little bit for being so shallow, his gaze fell to her body. As perfect and flowing and supple and curvaceous as he remembered. Her alabaster skin had radiance under the lights, it didn't look like skin. It seemed like a shell. Whatever was inside was glimmering delicately on all sides, letting them know, I'm here. The dress was lovely, strapless white lace that accented the swell of her BS and then suddenly cinched in her tiny waist with a pink silk sash the same color as the one used on her lips. It didn't shine like her lips though. The dress again slipped over her hips so you could see their roundness and the way they flowed into her legs. It spread down to her mid-calves but there was a S up the right side that gave him a glimpse of that milky thigh once every few seconds. She was smiling but even Naruto could see her grip on Neji's arm was so hard that her knuckles were white and bloodless. When they finally reached the end of the aisle he had to unhook her iron-hard grip on his forearm. For a millionth of a second she looked terrified as if Neji was a float that had kept her above water in a flood, but then Naruto smiled at her and she lost all the tension she had been storing. She took a step forward then reconsidered, turning away she threw her arms around her cousin Zen and hugged him as hard as she could. He looked surprised but then wrapped his arms around her too. Thank you for this, she whispered. Their hair mingled together as she whispered, crow black and chocolate brown, and Naruto could suddenly see a certain resemblance. Neji looked like his father and Hinata like her mother but they were the same nonetheless. They were family and maybe once this was over, the only family each other had. He stroked her hair and whispered back. I wouldn't do it for anyone else you know. Hinata gave him one last squeeze. Thank you Neji. She dropped down from her tiptoes, she was too small to reach his shoulders even with heels, and went to stand by Naruto. The minister was watching curiously. He knew these people and it worried him. Even if they didn't know it they seemed very nervous. All except the bride. But then there was an impatient cough and he looked up startled. Sakura was grinning at him, each of her milk-white teeth shone under the lights making her look far too much like a predator. The officiate pushed his glasses up his nose and began. The ceremony felt warped. Parts of it dragged so slowly Naruto swore he could feel the earth revolving but the parts where she had to speak flew by, then they were both required to say the last few words that would bind them together. I do. He croaked. She watched him, her eyes burning and then whispered the words herself so quickly it was like an echo of his. There was a quarter second before the minister finally pronounced them husband and wife but it seemed to last a decade. Then they were through. He said the words and they were free and flying with only one thing tying them together. The invisible, unbreakable thread that bound them to each other. Hinata jumped on Naruto and kissed him, not in passion or desire but with an unrestrained joy that shone through every part of her. Their friends were laughing. Then taking each other's hands they ran back to the doors to sign the register. Hinata frantically scribbled her name and almost speared Naruto with the pen in her eagerness to get it to him. He signed in an almost unrecognizable scrawl. Beside them Neji and Sakura had signed the witness points and were asking the woman at the desk to finalize anything they might have missed. Hinata and Naruto were already out the door when they were done, waiting impatiently. Sakura handed the license to Naruto who looked at it once then handed it back. Sakura looked taken aback. Why are you giving me this? She asked. Naruto raised his eyebrows. Are you kidding? Give me that and I'll lose it or get barbecue sauce on it or something. You'll take care of it better. Sakura hesitated but then smiled and held out her hand for it. Time to go home then, said Neji. Hinata looked at him, shocked. I don't want to go home now. She gasped, I want to have fun, I want to enjoy myself, I want food. His stomach rumbled. They all laughed and Naruto wrapped his arms around and squeezed her stomach. We have food at the house. I don't want to go back to the house. She barked, laughing at the same time, and she danced away from him. Come on. She pleaded, let's go get some food. Naruto was at her side in an instant. I second the motion. He smiled, wrapping his arm around her and kissing her hair. Her rose, now slightly squashed from all the hugs and kisses she had received, gave her hair a sweet smell. You choose, wifey, what do you want? Actually, she said thoughtful, I've got an amazing craving for ramen. Tenten wrinkled her nose. That is not wedding food. Hinata stuck her tongue out. A compromise. Called Neji before the situation could develop. There's a nice place, maybe 5 minutes from here. They do fancy foods, dress it up, call it odd names, but it's really just ramen. They know what people like, but they know to make it look good. Tenten nodded. Sakura looked amiable enough. Hinata and Naruto watched suspiciously. If you hate it, we can go somewhere else. Hinata seed her head to the side, considering. She didn't seem too keen, but her stomach rumbled. Oh, what the hell? She cried, throwing her hands in the air. Let's go. She wheeled around and plowed off into the night, dragging her husband by the shirt sleeve, leaving her friends behind waiting for her to realize that the restaurant in question was actually in the other direction. The restaurant was surprisingly full, but Neji said a few quiet words to the maitre d' and handed him something. They found their table pretty quickly after that. It was a nice booth. Away from the kitchen and the windows, plush seats ringed it. There was a melted candle glowing in the center of the table. Naruto played with until Sakura moved it away from him to stop him getting wax on the tablecloth. In the center there was an expansive dance floor that shone under the lights, and at the head of the room a large jazz band. No one was dancing yet, maybe it was too early. A waitress came over, her tight black shirt unbuttoned to an almost indecent point, and leaned over the table. Unusually close to Naruto. He seemed oblivious. To order, she said huskily. What do you want, wifey? He asked Hinata. He seemed to be becoming very fond of this nickname. The waitress straightened up almost immediately. Hinata noticed this and felt a smug smile come unbidden to her face. Inspecting the menu, she chose the weirdest things she could find, the things she had always wanted but had never been allowed because someone was there to stop her. Naruto nodded in approval. I'll have the same, he said, not taking his eyes off her. Sakura ordered something and so did Neji. Tenten just said she would share his. The waitress nodded, seeming to have recovered by this point, and walked away. A handsome woman sailed onto the floor then and stood on the raised platform with the band, who struck up a rhythm. She smiled at the crowd and introduced herself as Carlotta. She wished them a good evening, then began to sing. It was wonderful to sit there and listen to the music. Their hands were entwined under the table, and even the funny named food was excellent. Naruto got some on his shirt and Hinata had to clean it. She would have got it all off, but he started kissing her when she was trying to concentrate. They even had their first dance as a married couple, their hands cradled to his chest, swaying on the spot. Only once the candle was burned down to a stub, and Tenten couldn't seem to keep her eyes open anymore. Neji did insist they go home. Sakura had already gone to sleep on the table. Naruto smiled as he prodded her awake. She mumbled something unintelligible and went back to her nap. Naruto sighed and stood. Scooping Sakura up, he carried her to the door. Hinata held it open for him and stepped out into the night. The temperature had plummeted in the time they had been inside, and Hinata whimpered, almost falling back inside to the warmth of the restaurant. Neji handed her his jacket and she pulled it on. Falling into step beside her husband, she stared ahead and wanted the darkness to proceed forever. She wanted to walk beside him, not in front or behind. She didn't even want to be in his arms, she wanted to be with him. Most of all, she wanted to be the part that he would always need, a comrade, a friend, and an equal. Finally the Hyuga complex came back into view. Neji went on ahead to divert the guard while the others went over the wall. Hinata and Naruto stopped in the hallway. Sakura's room was in the other part of the house to hers. Shifting Sakura to one side, Naruto laid his hand against Hinata's face and kissed her softly. A good night kiss. She watched him go with a sense of longing. Then let herself into her room. It was exactly the same, and this surprised her. She had expected a change. Something, anything, but it was exactly the same, right down to the foamy white canopy. Slipping of her shoes, Hinata rubbed her sore heels, then reached up and undid her dress. It fell to the floor. Finally she pulled the battered flower from her hair and was about to throw it away when she saw it properly. It was disheveled but still sweet-smelling and beautiful in its own way, so she walked to her windowsill and put it in a tall glass. She poured some water in with it, and it seemed instantly brighter. Going back to her bed, she pulled out a silk nightgown. It slipped over her body, leaving her skin singing at its touch. Climbing into her cool bed, she snuggled down but suddenly found that she had never been more awake. She raised her hand instead and looked at the ring. It was a spot of gold in her sea of ebony blue and ivory white. Gold like him. Hinata giggled and wriggled her toes. Suddenly there was a SCR, like someone dragging a chair across the floor, or a window opening. She sat up terrified as she saw a dark shape outside. The person pushed open the window and swung lightly through it. In one ridiculous moment she was worried for her flower, but the stranger deftly maneuvered around it and landed cat-like on the floor. Hinata. Hinata gasped in relief. Oh Naruto, you almost gave me a heart attack. Sorry. She couldn't see his grin but she could hear it. Then he launched himself towards her, landing heavily on the duvet, winding her. Naru. He clamped a hand over her mouth. Sorry. He whispered and began to kiss her shoulder and her collarbone. Little electric spasms tingled in her stomach and spread rapidly. Once more she buried her hand in his hair. He took this as encouragement and let his tongue trace over her tea and down her chest. Naruto. With a heavy sigh she pushed him off. He looked confused. I'm sorry. What for? I don't think I can. He tipped his head to one side. Questioning. I just really don't think I'm ready. He understood then. But the river, the lake, you seemed pretty eager then. Yes, then. But I really don't know what came over me. You touched me in the river, just put your hands on my waist and suddenly I was desperate to have you in. She stopped mid-word, blushing furiously, but later I was ashamed of myself. I was horrified that I had been so easy, such a slut. He made an angry noise but she waved him off. You see, I always told myself that I was going to lose my virginity on my wedding night, but when you touched me it was like something snapped. I wasn't me anymore, I was an animal, it was animal lust. Of course I love you. She jumped in quickly before he came to the wrong conclusion, always have. She smiled, still embarrassed, but I acted like a crazed creature, some succubus, like a vixen. Whatever she had expected she hadn't, though he would laugh. Vixen, huh? Well, I guess that makes sense. Hinata was confused but a little annoyed at him. Hinata, this is your wedding night, it's okay to do this. She shook her head. But I don't want to. Well, I do, but you see, I really don't think I'm ready to do that with you. I just need to prove to myself that I can resist you, that I won't become the vixen. He might have been laughing at her. She nodded. If he was angry or hurt he didn't show it, instead he just rose from the bed and headed for the window. He put one foot on the windowsill when she cried out. Naruto. What? He asked, sounding alarmed. Could you stay? He was silent. Sorry, is that selfish of me? But he was already back inside. She moved over on the bed but he shook his head. Let's not push our luck, Foxy, he said and walked over to the big couch, the same he had laid her on after the storm. White leather facing the fire. It troubled her that when he lay down she could no longer see him, but when she heard his slow deep breathing she found it amazingly soothing and she drifted into a nearly dreamless sleep. When she did dream it was of him and he wasn't nearly as far away. The next day Naruto sat up on the couch feeling stiff. He was still in his shirt and pants. Why was that? Holy crap. He gasped, flying up as if the couch was on fire, staring at his left hand. Finger, hand, metal. Ring. He was married. That was right, he had been married and then come to his wife's room and ended up sleeping on the couch. Oh, good morning, came a voice from the door. He turned, it was her wrapped in a towel, black hair plastered to her face. Morning. He felt a huge relieved smile appear on his face as he watched her. She walked over as if to kiss him but he dodged it and headed for the bathroom. He was about to go inside when he heard a tiny feeble cry. He turned and was shocked to find her, eyes glossy, staring at him. I knew you were angry. I knew it. Because I wouldn't. She couldn't finish. Naruto stared at her, confused then incredulous. He was beside her in 2 strides, wrapping her in his iron embrace. No, you dumb girl, no. Of course I'm not angry. He broke off, abashed. She looked at him confused. Morning breath. She stared hard at him then burst out laughing. He grinned sheepishly and leaned down to kiss her anyway. When he ended it she had an odd look on her face. What? You were right, morning breath. He laughed and darted off to use her shower. 5 minutes later she was dressed and towel drying her hair. She walked into the bathroom where the water was running. Thanking God that the glass was misted she called out to Naruto. Naruto. Our rings, I was thinking we should take 'em off just in case somebody sees. The water stopped and the door opened. Hinata squealed and went scarlet. He stood before her, resplendent and shining under her raw white light. His hair was a shade of honey and the smooth lines of his toned body were like a sculpture. Hinata felt the heat begin to spread. Abruptly she turned and walked out. He followed a second later, thankfully wearing a towel. Walking over to her jewelry case he picked up her N lace. There was a single pearl on the end. Pulling his ring off the third finger of his left hand he dropped it over the chain and then fastened it around his N. Quickly he found one for her and held out his hand for her ring. After a short hesitation she handed it to him. He hung it from the chain and walked behind her to fasten it. He brushed her hair out of the way and fastened the chain at the back of her N. The cold chill of metal on the warmth of her skin, and his fingers brushed her N and she shuddered. He laughed softly and lowered his face to the back of her N. He pressed his hot lips against the ridge that marked the top of her spine. She jumped forwards, turned and smacked him around the head. Yelping he fell back. About to apologize, she then noticed he was laughing. Just tasting rather, she squeaked and, tucking the N lace into her top, she walked out of the room. Oh Hinata don't, but he still wasn't dressed and couldn't follow. Hinata walked to the lakeside where she found Sakura, slightly hungover, but cheerful. Hey there Mrs. Uzumaki. She smiled. Hinata grunted and flopped onto the grass beside her. What did he do? Sighed Sakura, rolling onto her side and looking at Hinata. Barely anything. Lazy lover. Well, I can't say it surprises me. No, we didn't even do that. What? Asked Sakura, visibly disbelieving. On your wedding night. I didn't want to. Sakura blew a long breath between her pursed lips. Well, if you can resist, more power to you. Hinata stared at the sky and then figured there was no point in hiding anything. Exactly. Sakura raised an eyebrow. I can't resist. Twice before we've come close to having that, she shivered, and I was uncontrollable. Because of a badly applied eroge, Naruto now refers to her as the S-vixen. Quote. Sakura giggled. Don't laugh. It's serious. I just want to prove to myself that I have a little self-control. Sakura made as if to zip her mouth up but continued to shake with silent laughter. Forget it. Hinata muttered and made to get up. No. Wait Hinata. I understand. I totally understand that. It's just, she broke down in another wave of giggles. S-vixen. Oh. Hinata blushed. I wish I'd never told you. No Hinata. Sakura leapt up and went to stand in front of Hinata as she marched away. I know what you mean, but I was thinking until the marriage is consummate it can be annulled. You need to have S before you tell your father or he could undo it. Hinata froze so still it seemed as if she had been turned to stone. Only her dark hair gave her away. I have to, she couldn't continue. She had been so caught up in the getting married she hadn't thought about the aftermath. And she had to tell her father. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.